Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you all. We begin our service each week by acknowledging that the land on which our homes and our church were built was not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or other nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Shitchumsh, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you're joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or moved through the place where you now live. We pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. And now let's join our voices together for our words of welcome, our unison chalice lighting, and our sung affirmation. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, and however bumpy your life's journey, know that you are welcome here. And if you have a chalice, I'd invite you to go ahead and light it now.
Good morning, I'm Pam Arbor Green. Will you please join with me as we say the words to light our chalice? In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and we seek to share.
Let's join now in our sung affirmation.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
So good morning again. Today's service invites us into the work of Dr. Brené Brown on living a wholehearted life. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Dr. Brown is a clinical psychologist, a writer, and a storyteller who burst into public consciousness with her TED Talk focusing on shame and vulnerability. Her research introduced her to a number of people who were living amazing and inspiring lives, and she got curious. She asked herself, what did these folks value? How did they create and cultivate resilience? What got in their way? And how did they address those challenges? And perhaps most importantly, can anyone do it? In researcher mode, she went through data from thousands of interviews and began to see patterns, which she put into two columns, do and don't. And then she stepped back, expecting to see that the wholehearted people would be, in her words, just like me, doing all the same things I was doing, working hard, following the rules, doing it until I got it right, always trying to know myself better, doing things exactly by the book. Instead, she realized she was pretty much living in the don't column. What followed was a breakdown spiritual awakening, a 2-year journey into self-understanding, grounded in self-compassion that transformed Dr. Brown. She shares what she learned in 3 books, The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, and Rising Strong. Now, here's the thing. As I read the books, I realized I spend a little too much time living in that don't column as well. And I wonder if some of you might too. So today we're going to go on a little journey of our own in service of living a more wholehearted life. We'll go through the guideposts that Dr. Brown identified as hallmarks of a wholehearted life. So thank you for being here with me and going on this journey. Our opening hymn is When I Am Frightened, so I invite you to join in singing.
When I frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me? Comfort me tenderly. Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to
Imagine you're a girl on 10-mile stilts. You travel around the world, just taking it all in. And you'll never touch the ground. Is it a blessing or a curse? Too hard to be found, are you lost or just rehearsed? Got a heart that opens clear in this cool September dark, and it rests on treetop leaves, and it bursts its little sparks. Sometimes it sings its songs, and it lets its secrets out, except for one, sears inside that it cannot live without. But if I tell you, will you take it? Will you shine it up to me? Can you be strong to let me go on you shine it up to me? Can you be strong to let me go on and set this freedom free? This freedom. Set this freedom free. Set this freedom free.
Oh, that was so gorgeous. Thank you, Paul. I experience life as a spiral journey. There are certain lessons that I come back to again and again, integrating them on a deeper level each time. And so it was that I came to these 3 books by Brené Brown. And it's not that they were earth-shattering. It's not that they held things that I hadn't encountered before, but it was like a series of small tremors, these aha moments that shook everything I know about being human and living a wholehearted life into a deeper and more rooted place. So I listened to the audiobooks while I was walking or running or driving, and it made me feel better. It made me feel more grounded and resilient and resourced, clearer about who I am and how I want to be in the world, which of course means that I want to turn around and share them with you. Now, of course, a book report isn't the most worshipful of experiences, but Dr. Brown distilled her research into these 10 guideposts, that list of do's and don'ts that I mentioned at the beginning of the service. Now, I also just want to add that when she first distilled that list of do's and don'ts, she was so freaked out by the fact that she lived her way down the don't column that she shoved it under the bed and left it there for 2 years. So we're going to hold this with some gentleness and some acceptance and some good humor. But I'm going to take you through the 10 guideposts and share just some thoughts and some stories, and then invite you into reflection. So there will be questions for reflection. We won't pause very long on them, so you might want to have a journal nearby, write them down and save them for later, save these questions for later. So the first guidepost is that if we want to live a wholehearted life, we should cultivate authenticity. And we should let go of caring too much about what other people think. Now, I grew up the eldest child in an abusive and alcoholic family system. And so as a child, I learned that I had to work very hard to earn love and safety. And I always thought if I could be perfect, maybe things would be better. In the midst of the chaos that was my childhood home, I craved harmony and peace. And so I grew up to be a people pleaser. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, which is a mediator. And our great gift is that we see how to resolve conflict and create that harmony and peace that I craved when I was little. But the sin is that we tend to lose touch with our own shape and our own needs. I really thought that my job was to become what other people needed me to be. And I was really good at it until I got into a system that was too big and complicated to keep everybody happy. And when that happened, what I had to learn was how to embrace my own imperfection. I developed this spiritual practice I've talked before about sinking into my own inadequacy. I learned to tolerate messiness, to expect messiness, and to hold differences of opinion and experience more gently. It's still really hard for me to hold when somebody's angry at me, when I've caused hurt or unhappiness. But also, I've noticed that the older I get, the less willing I am to let go of my authentic shape in order to keep other people happy. So the insight that Dr. Brown brings to this work that was so eye-opening for me has to do with belonging. And the sense of belonging. Everybody wants to feel like they belong. And we're taught that we earn that feeling of belonging by conforming to other people's expectations. But what her research showed was something very different. True belonging is when our authentic self is seen and accepted. Now, this little insight really shifted how I understand community. I think I've gotten better at finding my true shape when I'm by myself out in the woods. But I think community is about learning how not to change our shape when we are in relationship. So we engage with compassion the places where our shape or our needs rub or bump into other people's. And it looks like slowing things down, and it feels like growth rather than losing ourselves in those relationships. So that's the first guidepost. And your question for reflection, with regard to the universal longing for belonging, what supports you in sharing your authentic self? And what renders you vulnerable to caring too much about what other people think of you? And we're going to put that question in the chat. I've got a lot to move through, so we're going to go pretty quickly. But if you want to write it down or cut and paste it, please do so. The second guidepost is, if we want to live a wholehearted life, we need to cultivate self-compassion and let go of perfectionism. Now, for years, I've called myself a perfectionist in recovery, but it's complicated by the fact that I truly believe that we're either learning and growing or we are dead. Those are our only two choices. So if I'm reading self-help books or eating healthy or trying to get rid of clutter in my home, am I caught in the grip of perfectionism, or am I on my authentic path to a more joyful and fulfilling life? And what I've learned is that attitude is key. If change or growth is coming from a place of, I should be better, I need to be better, it feeds perfectionism. It also doesn't usually work as well. When my motivation is self-love, self-care, that desire for a more joyful and fulfilling life, and when I accept myself unconditionally as already just fine, exactly the way I am, not only is growth or change healthy, but it unfolds effortlessly and things stick better. Dr. Brown talks about this as understanding the difference between healthy striving and perfectionism. She writes, as I conducted my interviews, I realized that only one thing separated the people who felt a deep sense of love and belonging from the people who seemed to be struggling for it. The one thing is the belief in their worthiness. It's as simple and as complicated as this. If we want to fully experience love and belonging, we must believe that we are worthy of love and belonging. Now, sometimes I have to trick myself about this. Can I? And the question that I hold is, would I treat somebody else this way? Can I be as compassionate toward myself as I am toward everyone else? I think about it as two bars. There's one bar that I need to lower, which is that bar of expectations on myself when it comes to what I'm able to accomplish, especially right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We've been doing this for a year. So can we lower the bar of what we expect of ourselves on any given day? And then can we raise the bar when it comes to the amount of care and compassion that we're willing to give ourselves, so that we treat ourselves as if we are at least as worthy as everyone else in our lives? The second question for reflection is this: can you fully embrace your own worthiness? And we're going to hold this question while we sing together, How Could Anyone?
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? connected to my soul.
So the third guidepost is that if we want to live a wholehearted life, we need to cultivate resilience and let go of numbing out. Now, I think we all have a certain capacity for fear, suffering, and grief. I know I have a certain capacity, and there are times when I'm in the healthy range and I feel like I can hold everything I need to hold fairly comfortably. There are times when I'm on the edge for a long time. And it's uncomfortable to be on the edge, but I found that eventually, if I can just stay with the discomfort, my capacity expands. And then there are times when I am beyond that capacity. And those are the times when I feel like I need to numb. And numbing could be having an extra glass of wine or binging a TV show or eating all the carbs. And Dr. Brown points out that even wholehearted people numb, but wholehearted people were aware of the dangers of numbing and had developed the capacity to feel their way through uncomfortable feelings. So I've learned over time that rather than numbing, I can take a break. It's okay to take a break. I give myself the gift of space and rest. I engage in the practices that keep me resilient and make me more stretchy when it comes to that capacity. So I go walking in the woods. A good friend showed me a yelling at the universe rock that I find very useful. You stand on the rock and you yell at the universe, and it's fun. I take a break from the news. I listen to music. I meditate, and if I'm meditating and I fall asleep, then naps are good too. Dr. Brown's research shows that resilience is actually rooted in spirituality. And she defines spirituality this way. Spirituality is recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us, and that our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love and compassion. Practicing spirituality brings a sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose to our lives. Now, I know that higher power language may be triggering for some folks, but she's very clear that atheistic spirituality is still spirituality. That inextricable connection sounds like the interdependent web, or maybe that love that is holding us. And as for the sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose, that just means that what we do matters. And that's our motto at the UUCP. So that's the third guidepost. And the question for reflection: what spiritual practices support your resilience? The fourth guidepost, if you want to live a wholehearted life, is to cultivate gratitude and joy and let go of scarcity and fear of the dark. Now, I've been pretty open that at times I struggle with depression and anxiety, which means I stay in therapy. I'm very careful about my mental health hygiene. And occasionally in my life, I've needed the support of medication. But here's some things that have really helped. There's a gratitude practice every morning and every night before I go to bed. I take some time to offer gratitude for people in the morning and for what has happened over the course of the day at night. And it's a discipline. It's taken time to develop that discipline. Dr. Brown talks about the difference between an attitude of gratitude and the practice of gratitude. So not just an attitude, but a practice, a discipline. She suggests that we cultivate a childlike sense of wonder. Now, for me, when I ask myself what gets in the way of gratitude and joy, there's a part of me that asks, is it privilege? Where do I get off enjoying life when other people are suffering? Dr. Brown offers some other things we do to sabotage ourselves, saying things to ourselves like, I'm not going to allow myself to feel this joy because I know it won't last. Acknowledging how grateful I am is an invitation to disaster. I'd rather not be joyful than have to wait for the other shoe to drop. Here's the thing though. It doesn't take very long living on this earth to realize that, of course, joy is not going to last, and disaster is going to come, and the other shoe is going to drop. So how do we allow ourselves to experience the joy? How do we cultivate it so that when disaster comes, the other shoe drops, we have the resilience to deal with it? So the question for reflection on this guidepost: how do you cultivate joy and practice gratitude? The fifth guidepost she offers is to cultivate intuition and faith, and to let go of our need for certainty. Now, like many of you, I am a planner. I'm a list maker. Dr. Brown said when she first saw the results of this research, she felt it as an attack on her old friend's logic and reason. One of my favorite strategies for anxiety management is actually to prepare for the worst possible scenario, because I figure if I'm prepared for the worst, then if something better actually happens, then that's a pleasant surprise. But I also know this: there's a still small voice that whispers in my heart, and my life goes better when I listen to it rather than my anxiety and do what it tells me to do. I also know that mature faith doesn't exist in opposition to doubt, but on the other side, once you move through it. So we can hold both faith and doubt. Dr. Brown writes, intuition is not independent of any reasoning process. In fact, psychologists believe that intuition is a rapid-fire, unconscious associating puzzle. The brain makes an observation, scans its files, and matches the observation with existing memories, knowledge, and experiences. Meanwhile, faith is a place of mystery, where we find the courage to believe in what we cannot see, and the strength to let go of our fear of uncertainty. We don't get a crystal ball. None of us get to be in charge of the universe, because sometimes that need for certainty looks an awful lot like a desire for control. I think this guidepost is here to help keep us from getting stuck and immobilized. Reminds us that we need to stay light on our feet. When it comes time for us to take a leap of faith, I want you to remember you can trust your wings and you can trust your safety net. Your wings are your own resilience, your own good heart, patchwork and all. And your safety net is your community. You can trust that we'll be here for you if you fall and need someone to catch you. So the question for reflection that goes along with this guidepost: what helps you have faith in your intuition and release the need for certainty? The sixth guidepost is this: if you want to live a wholehearted life, get creative and let go of comparing mind. Now, my mom growing up was an artist and an art teacher, and so it was made clear to me very early on that I did not inherit her gifts. So I channeled all my creative energy into writing and into music, which is fine. And then I doodled a lot on the margins of my notebooks. When I got to seminary, I took a painting class though, and I loved it. I loved playing with colors and shapes. And to this day, when I'm wrestling with something, I found it really helps to take out the pastels or my acrylics and just play. But it's a near thing. It was a near thing. That sense of being judged and not good enough almost kept me from putting paint on paper ever again. Dr. Brown reminds us, there's no such thing as creative people and non-creative people. There are only people who use their creativity and people who don't. Unused creativity doesn't just disappear. It lives within us until it's expressed, neglected to death, or suffocated by resentment and fear. The only unique contribution that we will ever make in this world will be born of our creativity. So if we want to make meaning, we need to make art. As long as we're creating, we are cultivating meaning. So the question for reflection that goes along with this guidepost: what is your favorite mode of creative expression? And what else might you try if you didn't care what anyone else is going to think of the results? What's your favorite mode of creative expression? And what else might you try if you really didn't care what anybody else is going to think of the results? The seventh guidepost is that if we want to have a wholehearted life, we need to play and we need to rest. And we need to let go of using exhaustion as a status symbol. Do I even really need to go over this? I feel like I've said rest is resistance every Sunday for months now. But you know, I think I say it for myself as much as for anybody else. I grew up with a strong Protestant work ethic. If I am busy, that means I am important, and that busyness feeds into my sense of worth. But over time, I've had to learn that less is more. I'm more effective and more efficient when I'm well rested and joyful. Dr. Brown says, the data clearly shows that wholehearted people fool around a lot. She was so steeped in that Protestant work ethic that it took her a while to recognize play. She references Dr. Stuart Brown, who writes, the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression. The first property of play is that it is purposeless. It's fooling around. It is purposeless. We need to detach our sense of worth from our to-do list because as a society, we are in desperate need of more downtime. The question for reflection that goes with this guidepost is, how do you like to play? And I just want to offer a caveat because I know that you working parents don't have enough time and space to play these days. So first, lower the bar. Seriously, if the kids are alive and know they are loved at the end of the day, you are doing brilliantly. And second, I promise, when we come out the other side of this pandemic, your church community, will find ways to care for your kids so that you can get some downtime. Hang in there. The eighth guidepost is this. If we want to live a wholehearted life, we need to cultivate stillness and meditation and let go of anxiety. Now, we've known for a long time that meditation is good for us. But when I was a working mom with 2 little kids, no way was I going to get 20 minutes to sit on a cushion and watch my breath. I couldn't get 2 minutes to go to the bathroom by myself. So I learned one breath meditation at stoplights, in between activities, during that 2 minutes in the bathroom. I would just breathe in, hold, out, shoulders down, face relaxed. Now, as the kids grew, I've been able to integrate more extended practices, but here's my confession. I am a very, very mediocre meditator. When I do counting meditations, which are kind of one of my staples, I lose my place all the time. My monkey mind is fierce. But the great news is the data shows it doesn't matter how good you are at it. Doesn't matter how good or bad. What matters is that the practice is reliable, that you integrate it into your life on a daily basis. Dr. Brown writes, stillness is not about focusing on nothingness. It's about creating a clearing. It's opening up an emotionally clutter-free space and allowing ourselves to feel and think and dream and question. So remember the power of the pause. Come back to that one breath meditation. I found it to be especially useful when I'm about to blow my top. Stop that unthinking forward motion. Just create a little clearing. Give yourself the gift of making a choice. Which direction do I really want to go? The question for reflection that I offer along with this guidepost is this. If you already have a meditation practice, is there a way to take it deeper? And if you don't, is there something that feels small and doable that you're willing to try? The 9th guidepost is that if we want to live a wholehearted life, we need to cultivate meaningful work, and we need to let go of self-doubt and supposed to. Now, I know that I am beyond lucky to have a clear calling. I love my job, and I get paid to do something that is meaningful and so enriching of my life. Which isn't to say that I haven't struggled with imposter syndrome, and it's also not my only calling. For many years, I was on the mom track. I wasn't working because being a parent was just as important to me as ministry. And you haven't seen my struggle in balancing those two callings because my kids were mostly grown by the time I got here to Moscow. But in the congregation I served when the boys were younger, I went back to work when my youngest started kindergarten. It was a source of tension and conflict in my life. Dr. Brown writes, "We all have gifts and talents. When we cultivate those gifts and share them with the world, we create a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. Squandering our gifts brings distress to our lives. As it turns out, it's not merely benign or too bad if we don't use the gifts that we've been given. We pay for it with our emotional and physical well-being. When we don't use our talents to cultivate meaningful work, we struggle. Sharing our gifts and talents with the world is the most powerful source of connection with God. Using our gifts and talents to create meaningful work takes a tremendous amount of commitment because in many cases, the meaningful work is not what pays the bills. No one can define what's meaningful for us. Culture doesn't get to dictate if it's working outside the home, raising children, lawyering, teaching, or painting. Like our gifts and talents, meaning is unique to each one of us. You know, it's never too late. I just want to say too, it's never too late. Look at our retirees in this congregation. They are still doing meaningful work, learning and growing and making a difference as they're able. I don't see people wasting life energy. I see people finding ways to keep moving forward and keep being and expressing who they're meant to be in the world. And wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if we could have a society that actually celebrated caregiving, volunteering, raising children as meaningful work so that that wasn't a countercultural choice? The question for reflection that goes with this guidepost: what is your meaningful work right now? And I'll add, and how can we as a community affirm you in that work? The 10th guidepost is that if we want to have a wholehearted life, we need to cultivate laughter, song, and dance. And we have to let go of being cool and always in control. So in the book, Dr. Brown talks about having dance parties in the kitchen with her kids. And it reminded me of how it used to be when my kids were younger. We used to have dance parties too, but these days my kids are embarrassed by my dancing. They don't like my music and they hate it when I am goofy. So reading this book led to a, well, tough moment for me because I want to live a wholehearted life. I love to dance. I'm very goofy and my kids are just going to have to put up with it, or, you know, they can move out. It's my house. Dr. Brown writes, Laughter, song, and dance are so woven into the fabric of our everyday life that we can forget how much we value the people who can make us laugh, the songs that inspire us to roll down the car window and sing at the top of our lungs, and the total freedom we feel when we dance like no one else is watching. I can't wait until this pandemic is over and we can have street dances and go to movies again and listen to live music. But in the meantime, let's just crank up the radio. The question for reflection that goes with this one: what's your goofiest jam? And can you get it on? And I'm just going to note that we're going to have an opportunity for a virtual dance party this coming week. So keep your eyes on your email announcements and Facebook. In closing, I imagine that most of you are like me, and on some level, you already knew all this stuff that we've just gone through, all of these guideposts, the truth of what it takes to lead a wholehearted life. But my hope is that by going through it and having it broken down this way, so clear, so kind, is Dr. Brown's work, I hope that that helps you reconnect with what you know. And I hope it makes you feel better the way it did me. And I hope it invites all of us to live just a little bit more wholeheartedly. So be it, and so may it be. And now let's join together in our sung benediction. There is a love. I invite you now to extinguish your chalice and say with me these words. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place, and may it guide our way until we are together again. Beloveds, I know I went really fast today. So if any of you would like copies of my outline, I'm happy to send them to you, or just pick up a copy of the book or listen to it on tape. It's really, really good stuff. I look at you, look at these beautiful faces, and I know that I have learned so much and received so much through your example of truly living wholeheartedly, day in and day out. It's the greatest privilege of my life that I get to be with you on your life journeys. I love you all.